welcome to Doors and Corners, a sci-fi and fantasy film commentary podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Zach. And every Friday we sit down and watch a science fiction or fantasy film and give our 2 cents on its quality, production, story, and trivia.
We watch the film together, but without sounds or visuals provided to avoid copyright issues. But if you do have access, we encourage you to join us and follow along.
Here, we like to keep things casual, and there may be discussions of spoilers or sensitive materials or language. But we do try and keep things clean and family-friendly. Ultimately, the goal of this podcast is to create the experience of us all sitting down and watching this movie together.
So get ready to hit that play button, because we're about to get started.
Damn doors and corners, that's where they get you.
Welcome back to Doors and Corners. I'm Brian.
I'm Zach.
And I welcome you tonight as we are taking a look at the 2014 remake of Robocop.
Yes, indeed. And man, there is no denying that this movie does not have the legs of the previous. There's no denying that this is not even a worthy remake of the original. But, man, it has that glimmer, has that glint. You know what I mean?
There's definitely some stuff there. But before we jump in, do you want to do that thing where I please ask you to like and subscribe and just leave us some feedback wherever you're listening to this. We really appreciate it. We'd love to hear from anybody who has some insight or input or suggestions for us. So, if you would, we'd appreciate it. But let's jump into this because this is an interesting one. Because out of all the remakes, this is one of the few that if you told me you wanted to watch, I'd be like, all right, let's watch it. Like, I wouldn't be like frustrated or anything because most remakes, I'm like, I'm good. This one is that middle ground where there's quite a bit of it that I enjoy, and the parts that aren't amazing still aren't bad. It's just, again, it has a legacy, and it has a legacy of one of the most iconic sci-fi films of all time. So it's I'm looking forward to this because it's I think this has I'm not going to say unique, but it's in a small category of remakes that doesn't suck.
Yeah, I've read a whole lot of opinions. I talked with some other people. The general consensus of this movie is that it absolutely sucks ass. But the entire reason for why that is that it's just not, it doesn't live up to the original. There's a video game that I'm actually quite partial to that is called Mass Effect Andromeda. That I will sit there because one of the reasons that, like, Brian and I first started getting along, not that we didn't get along, but we started talking to each other and bonding a little bit over, was the video game series Mass Effect. And they came out with the trilogy. It's legendary to this day for several reasons, most of them positive. And then there was Mass Effect Andromeda, the Legacy sequel, that was not well received. And part of it is because it just didn't live up to the writing and the character of the originals. And like this movie, there's some amazing things to that game, and it deserves more recognition for it. And sadly, very few people want to.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison because Mass Effect Andromeda is not a horrible game. People like to point out day one technical things, which has no bearing on like the legacy of a game. I think if you're being objective. And like this is a film that, is it the original Robocop? Is it, that level of just iconic? Of course not. Is this a horrible film? No, it's not. I would, even if I liked this less than I did, I would still want to defend it because there's definitely a lot of people who just make a decision about entertainment and then that is the objective truth forever. And this is one of those that I think this is a good looking movie for the most part. There's some design decisions we can talk about that I don't love, but the crew that was doing the special effects work, I think did a fantastic job. There's a lot of good acting in this movie. Like it's interesting that we were talking about last week. There's so many good character actors and so many memorable characters in the first movie. I don't think there's as many memorable characters in this movie, but there's a lot of solid acting going on by some really heavy hitters. And then at the same time, the attempt was there, and it's they just. It's funny because I think that it's so well known and understood. If you look at any set of commentaries, essays, and there's a lot written about the original film as far as what made it so good, and it's always baffling to me how, for whatever reason, if it's corporate creative culture or just the studio system or whatever you want to call it, when it seems so obvious why a classic is considered a classic, why that's missed so easily when it's not some mystery. It's usually well known and well documented, but it's missed constantly. And that is, again, this movie is not a satire at all. It just plays it straight. And that's such a weird decision when it's so well known that that's what made the first movie so iconic. So, I don't want to turn it into a whole studio system and corporate creative culture, which I literally just thought of that phrase. I think that works, but why? Why is it so hard to make a good movie when you literally have the formula just sitting there? And this is a bigger question, but like, it does seem odd that it's so difficult when it's been done so many times and it's quite literally documented on film.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that with video game movies. How hard would it be to turn the original Uncharted game into a movie? But no, they make their Uncharted movie and it's nonsense. They're making up the plot. It doesn't belong to any of the games. Like, you have the blueprint for the story. It doesn't need to be different. Audiences who are fans of the game don't want it to be different, but you're like, we've got to surprise them or something like that. Or maybe there's writing credit issues. They don't want to have to pay somebody else. I don't know. But for this movie, I very much feel similar that, like, they needed to go for some sort of satire. I personally think that there's politics involved in why they didn't go with the satire, because we're still in this dead zone of creativity where we can't write a lot that's very interesting right now because it'll offend somebody. And I think that this movie was in the period that was very much the beginning of that. Or not the beginning, but in the early years of it. And if they wanted to follow through with Verhoeven's original vision of the first movie, they definitely wouldn't be able to, because it revolved around the idea of what would inevitably happen to the failure, or the success, I should say, of achieving a liberal utopia.
Yeah.
And that would be such an interesting thing to put on film today, is have this future where, you have your liberal utopia, but also look at the weaknesses of that worldview and where that would end up doing it. Because we have a lot of those with right-wing stuff right now, where they're showing these dystopian cultures that would come out of a far-right existence. But we don't have much that does that with the left. And I think that'd be a really interesting commentary that you can make that helps people really reflect and have introspection on their beliefs, while also producing a fun movie with a cop that shoots stuff.
Yeah. Well,
he's a robot.
He's a cyborg. Did we discuss this?
But he's the robot cop.
He's a robot. Somebody actually says that in this movie, right? They literally say robot cop.
Yes.
Or is that in 3? Okay. Maybe it's both.
I think it's in 3, but I think it's in this one too.
Okay. One of the things that, there are many things that strike me about this movie, but it is interesting that it was kind of not a dystopia at all. It was just regular 2014 America with slightly more advanced robots. I
said it was 2028.
I know, but you know what I mean? Like, it presents as just barely in the future, and the only real thing is that apparently America is policing Tehran, which is a really interesting choice to make as your one statement about what the world has turned into. But it's just it doesn't, I feel like, have anything other than just, this is a weird comparison. I felt very, very similar with Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron really started to pick at the idea of, it's the idea of like robots running things and kind of giving, control to just, like it's all about security, and we should build a system that just takes care of us, and that is, and that really we should, take the human element out in a certain. I mean, like, not that Age of Ultron was exactly that, but it like wanted to dive into this deeper question about Ultron's worldview, and it kind of opened up a few questions, and then just was like, nah, we're just gonna smash and punch a bunch of robots, and we're gonna kill one of the twins immediately, and it didn't take its theme anywhere interesting in my mind. I actually like Age of Ultron quite a bit. I think it's underrated in the MCU, but you know what I mean? Like, it presented some interesting some interesting ideas about humans versus machines, and the idea of kind of free will, and if it's better to just have this kind of cold safety net, and what that might actually mean for just people's lives, and then just didn't go anywhere. And this movie, the same thing. It didn't go anywhere with the actual question of what would happen if you had, cold calculating machines running the whole thing. You had, the opening scene that we'll get to, as we start here in a few minutes, where it's like, this idea of it's so safe and amazing as everybody has to come outside and submit to random inspections by robot overlords with big guns, which is kind of terrifying. But like, that's it. It never explores that idea again. Then it just gets into the profitability of a corporation, because there's so much money to be made in America. There's like, they try to have a few quick back and forths between the senator and the Omnicorp guy who played, he's Michael Keaton. He's such a great actor, and he's kind of lost in this film. Anyways, but they just throw out enough interesting stuff there to make it sound intelligent, but never actually explore the idea. And the same thing with Alex Murphy. I feel like it's just he overrode the system because of his humanity somehow, like, brought him back despite our programming.
Power of love.
It is, and like, that's it. That there's nothing deeper than that explored, and it was just like, all right, it's just.
You see, it's interesting that you're bringing all of these up.
Sorry, we should talk about these while we watch it.
Oh no! Well, one thing I'm going to quickly say is that if you do really want to explore things with that concept that you're talking about in terms of AI and an AI designed to take care of us and what that could look like, blah blah blah, I highly recommend the. Technically, it's considered young adult, but I don't really know if that fits. A trilogy by Neil Shusterman called Scythe, because that does an excellent job with portraying a future that's like utopian/dystopian. Dealing with an AI that has been programmed to run the whole of humanity, and what that life could look like if it was actually done well. But nothing done well can last forever.
Yeah.
Very much recommend. Secondly, Age of Ultron is underrated. I agree with that. And what you were talking about with it not living up to its premise is also one of my big complaints with that movie. Because that was kind of par for the course of that time, and actually still very par for the course today in some ways. They
were pretty close, right? Wasn't Age of Ultron like 2015?
Yes.
Like, these were right around.
Yeah, right around each other. But there's a whole bunch of them that were right around each other. Okay, you had some movies that introduced really interesting theoretical concepts. Things like Captain America: Civil War, which was 2016. You had Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which was, I want to say, 2015 or 2016. And you had Batman versus Superman, which was 2016. Several of these things. They bring up these heady concepts. And then they just kind of, by the end of it, those concepts are no longer relevant to the story. And it's with those three movies in particular, which is why I mentioned them here, because they're one of my big pet peeve movies. It all boils down to "You hurt my mother," or something with my mother. And so I have a big pet peeve of not following through. And this one does that same exact thing, where it just kind of like glazes over the philosophical point for something more heart and family oriented. And I think that's one of the reasons why it kind of fails as a science fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, this just becomes an action film about a guy trying to reconnect with his family and avenging himself against the people who screwed him over. I mean, it's really, that's it. And you can say part of that about the first movie also, but the first movie, one, it was a little more complex as far as just the corporate infighting and kind of the corporate competition, which was a commentary about corporate culture. And also, this movie definitely talks about the cynical nature of corporate culture, but like, it wasn't that like 80s sleazy, which, as much as it's been dressed up, I fully believe still exists in corporate culture.
Very much so.
Yeah, and then also just the world, the way that it's presented in the original, just the depressing future where just there's nothing good or beautiful anymore. It's trying to be sold that way, in the news, the way that everybody's just like so, the idea of reporting happy things. Reporting horrible things with this very happy, just demeanor and just the environmental storytelling in the first one. There is no environmental storytelling in this movie really at all. And yeah. Anyways, but we should jump into it, and I'm sure we will revisit all these topics as we go. So you ready?
Yes, we absolutely should. I am just about ready. I'm going to go ahead and give me my next little summary here. We are going to be talking here about Robocop. This is 2014, which for some reason I always want to say 2016, but it is 2014. It is rated PG-13. It is 1 hour and 57 minutes long. Director is Jose Padilla. It was written by several different people, including Joshua Zootmer, Edward Neumeier, Mike Miner, though those are all technically, credits of, oh yes, this person did it, obviously. It was mostly Joshua Zootmeyer.
Yeah, aren't the original writers they didn't help with this film, right? They're just credited because they created the characters, essentially, and some of the story beats?
That is correct.
Yeah.
It was mostly Joshua Zootmeyer and Jose Padilla. But I still wanted to mention them because they are credited, and apparently they were interviewed about it, which I did find interesting. And we have, starring here, Joel Kinnaman, Gary Oldman, Michael Keaton, Abby Cornish, Jackie Earl Haley, Jay Baruchel, and Samuel L. Jackson.
It's a stacked cast.
And it is an incredibly stacked cast, and I feel like they could have done away with Samuel L. Jackson, saved probably $5 million, and, been able to put that movie into a better area and maybe had a little bit more interesting thing going on there.
Yeah. We'll talk about Pat Novak. I think he was a big miss, and nothing against Sam Jackson and his performance, but just the way it's done. Well, let's get going here. I'm gonna hit that play button in 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah,
I always
go ahead.
Go for it.
You first.
I was just gonna make a joke about how there's this one cartoon dog going play, and whenever you say 3, 2, 1, play, I always want to go play.
Now, do you, a little behind the scenes here as we hit the credits, do you hit play after I say, when I say play and then hit play, or do you try to hit play right as I'm saying play?
I try and sync it up where essentially the moment that the word play ends, I'm hitting.
Okay, yeah, because I try to click right as I'm finishing also. Look at that. Little intro, yeah. This, I always did find this a little bit just funny to start a movie on Sam Jackson doing vocal warm-up.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Reminds me a little bit of 2011's The King's Speech, which begins with a announcer who's being all dramatic, who is doing vocal exercises.
Yeah.
In similar fashion.
So, talking about Pat Novak here at the very beginning, again, the original film had the newscast, right? It's a famous part of the first one, and it was just, it had nothing, well, not nothing, it had very little to do with the plot. They rarely even mention the actual plot. It's just, it's environmental storytelling about the world, because they're telling you this world sucks as very, just happy, smiling, beautiful, news anchors just tell you, oh, this, a satellite malfunctioned and it melted 10,000 acres of crops. But, we're sorry, it's just, we're going to be fine. And it was satirical, and it was also telling you about the world. I mean, that's environment. It was unique and it was interesting, and it's also tells you just how cynical everything is because you have that. And this is immediately. It's like, okay, so we need to have a newscaster in the movie. It's like again, somebody took just the beginning of the note, like newscaster needed. Like you can imagine somebody having the bullet points for the first movie, and it was like, all right, newscaster, and then they stopped. And I was like, no, let's have a newscaster talk about the events of the world themselves and elaborate on the plot and give us a point of view on the plot. And let's definitely make him look like, a very, like not an actual newscast where they're just reporting the news. This is obviously modeled after, a modern cable news opinion piece, person. Someone like Bill O'Reilly or somebody like Sean Hannity
Alex
or
Jones
Colin.
almost. Well, a
Yeah.
little bit less official than Alex Jones.
A little bit, yeah, but you know
More
what I mean.
official, more.
It's not a news show. It's an opinion show for sure. Which is, I mean, to
Yeah.
be fair, that had happened. In the '80s, that was not really a thing. But again, I feel like somebody just took a third the notes they needed and then proceeded to shoot it. And again, we talked about this already. This opening sequence here, the fact is Tehran is like, wow, okay, so we're just like we took over, Iran. All right.
Yeah,
patrolling the
occupying
streets.
Iran.
Yeah, occupy. But this is like the one little picture of the future, like the peaceful, wonderful future that would be really dystopian if this was like a reality in a lot of the world. And again, the idea is introduced here and then just never talked about again.
Yeah, because like the rest of the world that they picture, that they show us, I should say, isn't the worst thing in the world. Technology has progressed to a really interesting place. And so, like, this doesn't seem like it'd be a terrible world to live in, despite some of the major problems it has. And I feel like that's a failure.
Yeah, and they say here, not in this part, but like right after this, where they kind of cut to the Omnicorp, and they're talking about that only America's the only market that doesn't allow robot policing. So like, is that inferring that robot police forces literally exist in like every country except America? I mean, they don't say that, but that's kind of implied. And you know, so is it look like this? I mean, this is Operation Tehran Freedom or whatever that they're saying in the background, but. So what does it look like in London or Paris or Sydney or, a developed world that apparently doesn't have laws against robot police forces? Like, again, there's some interesting stuff here they could have talked about. And they just like, nah, we're good.
We're just going to glaze on by all of it.
Well, and like we jump into like suicide bombers here. And even the idea that these suicide bombers are like, we don't want to kill anybody. We just want to die on TV. Like, wait, what? Okay. Again, you have an interesting take on suicide bombers, but it's
as somebody who lived in the Middle East, and in an area that unfortunately did have some terrorism issues when I was present. Like, this is really, really kind to the terrorist groups.
Well, I was just about to say, this is quite literally the PG-13 version of suicide bombing, right?
Oh my god. Almost PG.
Yeah.
I
do think like the design of the robots is cool though. Like, I mean, I think the updated is it Eddie or Ed?
Ed 209,
Ed 209?
and this is like an Edward 2009 or something like that.
Yeah. It looks cool. Again, I think the effects work in this movie is actually pretty darn good. But
especially for robots, I think that it was even like ahead of its time a little bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were just using stuff that they developed for Avengers.
Yeah. But like conceptually, this is they're conceptually they're going for a very interesting opening here. Now again, the execution is very PG-13. Can you imagine if this was a rated R movie and what they could have done
right?
with this opening? But like this stuff, like going through the smoke and just like again, this like I love the way the lighting works with the smoke. It all looks pretty good.
Yeah,
and I like
good lighting, especially on the robots and the explosions.
Yeah, I love that the Eds they move with like weight.
Yes, that's so rare.
Yeah,
there were certain things there was something there for a second when you have the newscaster who was like about to say, "Look at how well everything's working in perfect harmony." Very obvious bullshit thing.
Yeah.
Um, Now, that I thought was actually quite an effective scene
Yeah.
with the guy jumping on the robot like that. That I'm like, okay, I get what they're going for there. That's not terrible at all. That's a decent way of doing it.
Well, and this might
Um,
sound weird, but like this would have been so much more effective if they'd really shown that kid get like gunned down. I mean, like R-rated style. You could
yeah,
imagine Paul Verhoeven's version of that scene with the squibs hitting that like kid. That'd be disturbing. But no. It's
yeah,
just a smoke cloud because that's the kind of movie this is, violence wise.
yeah, very true. Um, and it's just there's not enough. Like, I love Samuel L. Jackson. He's really good sometimes. He doesn't have enough pizzazz. Like, he has that very obvious, I am stirring up people's emotions. I want him crazier. I want him to feel unstable.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking almost, but what is his name? J.K. Simmons in the recent Spider-Man movies, reprising his role as J. Jonah Jameson, right?
Yeah, like as like kind of
Like,
like a podcaster almost.
yeah, well, very much an Alex Jones ripoff, but he sells the crazy.
Yeah.
And I want this newscaster to either be really selling how great the world is and being total satire, like, look how good everything is, or to be crazy, because it was an almost unsettling, uncanny valley to the newscasters in the original, where they're like so happily reporting on these horrible things. He's not doing that. He's adding charisma and gravitas, where, like, yeah, I would want to watch a caster like that reporting on these things. But that's not what we should be seeing. You
Yeah.
know? We
And
should be seeing them be unsettling in their media presentation.
and I
That's
talked
my
briefly too. It wouldn't have bothered me if the theme had been at the end, if we had like a smash cut again at the end, or just kind of a Robocop, and I mean, again, I don't think this movie quite earns it, but like it would have. But there at the beginning, it was weird to have, after that scene, to just be like, yeah, action movie theme, this classic '80s, Robocop, and like let's go after this. Like, yeah, we just watch some kids get killed and in Tehran, like all right, it's just it.
Okay, I can bet you money, okay? I can absolutely bet you money that there was something along the lines of that theme was going to be used as the theme for the TV show.
Hmm. I'll just say this now, and I'll say it, I'm sure again at the end. I actually kind of hate the credits of this movie. Just like it's such like a weird, like they go with like a song, even though it's like a famous song, but just it's like yeah. It makes it not feel like
I'll be totally
sci-fi.
honest, I didn't even I didn't watch the credits. So I don't
So
even
that's
remember
fine.
what it was.
So part of the other big change here I thought was interesting is that they, I mean, I get it again. On paper, they're developing Murphy. He's a more developed character. They give him all, way more to do at the beginning, where he's like, he's got a history and they have this like past, where they kind of do a flashback as to what, got him in trouble, and they got his partner killed and not killed, sorry, injured, and that he's kind of a hot-headed cop who, he's a very stereotypical cop character, right? Just that detective who
Yeah.
doesn't let it go and goes against orders, and he just follows his instincts and is good enough that it gets him, leads him to the right place. There's all kinds of tropes, right, about that kind of cop. It's been made a
Loose
million times.
cannon.
Yeah, but it's I there's something about Murphy in the original that he was so like I innocent is a weird way to put it, but that's kind of just
Earnest.
yeah. He
The word
comes
you're
in and
looking for
he's
is
like
earnest.
I mean, there's a little bit of an aw shucks quality about him in the first one, where he's just like, I'm just being a cop is a sucky job, and I'm here to do my best, and I have the cool gun twirl because of the show I watch with my kids and with my son, and I'm here to do a great job, and I get along with my partner because there's some fun chemistry there, but it's just he's like this genuinely nice guy, and they establish that really fast and quickly in the first film, and here we're going with your very, again, played well. I mean, Joel Kidman's doing a perfectly fine job here, but a super cliche loose cannon cop character. And so when he gets turned, I don't think it's as effective because there's some body horror stuff. There's some just like, can you imagine being in his situation stuff? But it's not this tragedy of this good guy who just got totally screwed as a brand new cop. Like there's some, like that story's not done, right?
Yeah, I very much agree. I think that they made him too much of like the gritty cop. I don't feel as much sympathy for him as I should because or as they want you to, because again, he's very kind of bland as a character because again, it's saved by Joel Kinnaman's acting. I think he's one of the strengths of this movie. But he just this isn't doing anything for me.
No.
This is all stuff that I've seen 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I think that they should have made him a competent cop, good at stuff. They should have made him kind of a nerd, okay?
Yeah.
Like have him they go and sit at his desk and maybe he has like superhero bobbleheads or something, or he's working on something kind of cool. Maybe he's, building like a model ship or something, or a ship in a bottle.
Yeah.
Something hobbyish that makes him kind of an outlier that people's like, frickin' Murphy, right?
Yeah. Well, and the idea that he should have been a beloved cop, that for this to happen to him just gutted the department somehow, or like, that there was just a real reaction. But he's just, again, you said it. We have seen this cop character a bazillion times on television and movies, and there's nothing remarkable about his characterization here at all. He's got a hot wife and a cute kid, and he's perfectly comfortable in a gunfight. He jumps in like he does this every day. It's just unremarkable, and it's kind of boring.
Yeah. They have I had a really funny joke to follow that up.
Sorry,
but my brain just totally
I took you over there for a second.
Oh, well.
Interesting about, okay, did you think at all, or do you care at all that they replaced a female character with a black man?
Did they?
For Lewis? It's Lewis. I mean, it's just,
is that actually that's supposed to be Lewis?
Well, I mean, it's Lewis. There's no other Lewis. I mean, it's just interesting that...
Oh, because they have another... Don't they have another, like, character that, like, hangs out with him? Like, another female chick?
No.
Who's...
There's there's Gary Oldman's assistant. That's the closest you get to any other notable female character in this. And then the lawyer, like the one who's like, oh yeah, I'll put a gag order on his wife. Like, those are the only ones I can think of. Obviously the chief here, but
wow.
It was again interesting to me that in 2014, and I mean, I don't really care, but it was interesting to me that they would take like a notable strong female character from the 80s and change the character. I don't know why it struck me as like, all right.
That is really strange. And I think that, wow, now that you've actually said that and I've noticed it, because it's just been, I've never just sat and directly compared the two movies, that's like upsetting a little bit. Why would they do that? Like, that would work really well. If they were going to kill Lewis, fine. They kill her in Robocop 3. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen a 35-year-old movie.
Most people. And they don't care.
I mean, don't watch Robocop 3. This is better than Robocop 3.
Yeah, like twisting it around where like Lewis gets hurt earlier and kind of is a connection where he's like, dealing with that. But it's, seeing his... having a really sympathetic female cop get gravely hurt could have been an interesting story twist. It's just it was one of those things that, again, like I don't want to get caught in the weeds on the politics of that, but it's okay. Sorry, it's so I cannot remove that's Hiccup.
Really?
It's Hiccup's voice.
It's not Hiccup for me. It's Tropic Thunder.
Oh, see, for me,
Tropic Thunder?
Yes, I love Tropic Thunder, and he's great in Tropic Thunder. But I hear Hiccup. I hear Hiccup being a corporate sleazebag, and it's so weird, and it's especially weird because
Hiccup
literally,
also.
Spoilers are surprise, whatever. We're doing How to Train Your Dragon after this, which is just it's just funny. Oh goodness,
right? No, it's. His voice is so distinctive. It does throw me off. When he's in person, I just see him more as that weird sad sack character.
Yeah.
from Tropic Thunder.
I also,
Also-
weirdly think of him from the Magician's Sorcerer's Apprentice, that Nick Cage
The
movie.
Sorcerer's Apprentice. Oh, that's actually a better movie than
Yeah, it's not bad.
yeah. We should
And he
do
was
that one for one of our
yeah,
upcoming
he was
fantasy
actually
movies.
pretty good in it too.
Yeah. The addition of Michael Keaton, I think that he is a great actor for this type of movie and doing a remake like this. But honestly, he shouldn't have been the main corporate bad guy. With his kind of sack of crazy that he's got, he should have been like the physical target. He should have been the one who killed Murphy. Um,
Yeah,
the foot in your ass guy from the last movie.
yeah. Oh,
Red
he would have
Foreman,
been.
whatever his character actor name.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about Kirkwood Smith.
Yes, he should have been Kirkwood Smith's character.
Yeah. Well, because he can play crazy so well. And okay, by the way, the effects work on this is like, again, the hands and the guitar. I mean, I'm assuming the guitar is also CG, but like it looks really good.
I think I saw a visual effects thing on this. It's a combination of CG and real.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
Um,
it's because the villain that kills Murphy is entirely forgettable. He's just generic, European bad guy, like mobster guy.
Yeah.
It's just like I
It's not even
couldn't.
Jackie Earl Haley, you know?
No, yeah, you just. I mean, he plays just kind of the a-hole that you don't like, which is fine. He's very good at that. But yeah, the Murphy, the guy who Murphy is actually trying to get vengeance on because he almost killed him, is so not memorable in this film. And when you come off of Kurtwood Smith's performance in the first one, it's so odd because that role is so amazing in the first one, and he's got so many lines, and it's just so memorable. And I could not tell you who that character's. We just heard it like earlier in this film, and I cannot remember. It's like it begins with a V, Valentino or Valentino or something.
Yeah.
Who cares, right? And again, it's a problem this movie has with. You have these great actors, but yeah, it's right. You're totally right. They put them in the wrong role because you could have had Sam Jackson as your corporate like head guy making sleazy decisions, and then had Michael Keaton play his kind of underworld get stuff done guy who's slightly crazy, and that would have been fun.
Dude, Gary Oldman though, perfect perfect actor for this role, but also like just good in this role. Like you can see him actually trying. Which he said that this movie wasn't anything special to him. It was a paycheck movie. Because he does those a lot. A lot of the movies he talks about doing, it's just like, oh, people loved me in this. Like that was just a paycheck movie. He did Fifth Element as a favor,
Yeah. But
and this was very much a paycheck movie, but he still acts his butt off.
Oh yeah. This guy, we're staring at him here. Don't care about him. There's nothing emotional about him at all as a character, and he just gets
Nothing
killed
interesting
in a
about
very
him.
boring, bland action scene. We'll talk about when we get there. At least to me, it was. But yeah.
Yep.
And the idea of, I'm sorry, again, if it wouldn't be as egregious if we didn't have the, it's funny, we opened this podcast saying this movie's not horrible, and here we are talking about all the mistakes it's making. This movie made a lot
the
of
majority
mistakes.
of the mistakes that they make are in this part.
Yeah, in the setup.
Okay,
And,
I think that the setup and how the beginning is handled, are its big weaknesses. There are weaknesses in the middle and the ending also, but they had every opportunity to make so many of these characters super memorable, chatty sleazebags. They're not visually distinctive. Their characters aren't like personality distinctive even. It's just a whole bunch of generic bad guys. The main thing that's interesting about these is that oh, that's Michael Keaton, and that guy sounds like Hiccup. And that's what makes them interesting.
yeah.
They needed greater. This is going to be a running theme in this for me, actually. They needed better visual distinction in this movie.
Yeah.
It needed to have style, and it doesn't have style.
Yeah, it has slickness, but not style.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They even hint at some really good style,
Oh,
and then they don't use it.
the silver version of RoboCop's suit, I actually think looks really good in this movie. Like
Oh, it
it's a
looks
solid design.
great.
Yeah.
So, funny thing here, okay? They have Peter Weller on camera going, RoboCop shouldn't be remade. They should have lists of movies that shouldn't be remade, and RoboCop should be on that. And I'm like, you know what? He's not wrong. But at the same time, I also feel like RoboCop as a concept would work really well updated.
Mhm.
So whether you don't want to necessarily remake it or make like a legacy sequel to it, which there was going to be one, but it sounds like that's since fizzled out.
Yeah.
But that was in the trailer, every single one, the fake kiss thing.
Yeah.
But they they could have done something really interesting here. They could have done something really cool, and they just blew it. And they're not going to make another one because of the backlash on this thing.
Yeah. Well, again, I think if they had not tried to remake it, if they had, just like you said, if they had tried to follow up on the concept and really take a fresh spin on the, and that's where, if you're gonna remake it, truly look at what made the original special and go for an update. Or if you're like, no, this movie is amazing, but what else can we say about this idea? We have an interesting follow up, like that's perfectly valid, and I wouldn't have minded that at all. Yeah, you're right. The original film, if you wanted to do a follow up that did, incorporate a lot of the stuff that became so prevalent in the new millennium with technology and information and just no, I mean, all the things that in the 80s they were just kind of imagining, but we hadn't even gotten close to. There's a lot there, but it's just yeah, and even this again, I they're trying to quickly establish, oh, he's a family man, and he's got a cute kid, and here he's got a hot wife, and they're having, he's struggling and she's supportive, and and then it's just like, all right, it's a car bomb. I was gonna say with this, so I really hate the genericness of what puts him. It's just he walks out and his car explodes. That there's no the execution of Alex Murphy in the first RoboCop movie is a legendary sequence for a reason. I mean, granted, the over crazy squid work and the fact they had to make a prosthetic, like an animatronic model, puppet of him because it was so violent. There's no way you could do that to a real person. Like all that is part of what makes it. And this is just like, all right, his car blows up.
Yeah,
That's it. There's
no, very much so.
There's nothing memorable about this whatsoever. I mean,
Except
this is
they go into something about like fourth degree burns across 80% of his body, but he's clearly not
yeah.
there. Abby Cornish is perfectly acceptable in this role. I really hate how bland their relationship is. I think that they needed a little bit more, like less, I'm struggling, a little bit more. I don't want to say quirkiness because that can be taken the wrong way, but they needed to show that they were a strongly connected, like fun couple, and that they had fun with each other more than just one of the world's slowest, blandest sort of sex scenes.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, they got a little bit that I liked with his son, that they had the little bit about hockey. That, I mean, if you're paying attention, he had it on the son had a hockey game on when he came home, and then when they meet later, that he talks about, that, oh, I taped all the Red Wing games. I didn't watch any of them because I'm waiting to watch them with you. Like there's a tiny bit of narrative connective tissue there that gives him like a history with his son, that they have something cool together. And this is set in Detroit, so that actually makes sense because it's it's a big sport up there. But yeah, the husband and wife don't even have that level of connection. And I mean, I just described a total of 30 seconds worth of relationship building between him and his son, and it still is more interesting than what he and his wife have.
Yeah, like I genuinely don't understand why they were just like, let's have this scene where she strips down to her bra and they kiss on the bed for a second. It did nothing for the characters. It did nothing for the relationship or their believability. And Abby Cornish she's not a great actress. Like, I have nothing particularly against her. I've seen her in things like, the Jack Ryan TV series. She plays Kathy Bryan before she's Kathy Ryan, and then she got in something else and they had to write her out. But she's 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 stiff
Yeah.
in like
Well,
everything I've seen her.
I was gonna say
Maybe this
just
is
kind of
she's doing
bland.
that I haven't seen her.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that she's a perfectly inoffensive actress that doesn't. She just fills the role that There's a lot of handsome guys out there too that just do the exact same thing. They're just filling a part. They don't really add. They don't really add much. And
yeah.
now Gary Oldman. The thing I do like is he and I always get this last name. How do you pronounce Joel's last name? Is it Kidman?
Kinnaman?
Kinnaman?
Kinnaman.
Kinnaman?
Kinnaman.
Kinnaman. Joel Kinnaman.
Kinnaman.
Okay. Sorry. Joel Kinnaman. I think we
call him
brought
Rick
this up
Flag.
last week. I actually think that out of the 2010s, kind of good-looking, guys that kind of started popping up and stuff with Jai Courtney and who's
Sam
the guy that did Avatar? I already forgot his name.
Sam Worthington.
Sam Worthington. I think that he's actually like a pretty good actor, but
Yep.
I think he and Gary Oldman are the two strengths of this movie. Because Gary Oldman really does, I like the cut there. It just where he transforms when you pan past. I couldn't get the two P's there, man. Anyways,
You needed the pan past, not
he's
can
genuinely
past,
like,
can
I feel like he plays he does care, but he's also got weird moral lines that he kind of struggles with. Like he plays the kind of that balancing act of his moral compass is played well. And Gary Oldman he's just, again, like we meant, you said this, even when he's barely there, he's still better than 95% of all the actors working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he's one of those actors I think of in the same vein as like Anthony Hopkins or Bryan Cranston and things like that, where they are occasionally in bad movies, but they're never bad in the movie. Some actors, their acting will really vary. I love Christian Bale. Sometimes he's not great.
Yeah.
It's just you have that variation. Natalie Portman is sometimes horrendous, but sometimes she's incredible. Whereas Gary Oldman, never seen him give a bad performance, even in bad movies.
This whole sequence is, again, this Robocop, as far as like the design of his suit, I like a lot. They get a lot of mechanical. I like the shoulders. I like that, it has kind of that armored look, but also a little bit sleeker. It's interesting that he was wearing a suit, but you can tell obviously that his whole bottom half is CG because a human, like, hips don't fit in what you see there. But that's okay because they're not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a robot. But I like
the hips, the knees.
Yeah, I love the mixture of silver and black looks good. I actually. What do you think about this? I don't mind that they do the whole visor up and down to give him more of his face when he's out of combat mode. It doesn't bother me too much. I think it does let you connect with him as an actor a little bit. Although there was something about starting with him completely stripped down, because this movie immediately does give him he knows who he is. They don't start with him stripped down to nothing. They kind of try here to start with him more aware, and then they strip him down, and then they let him come back. So they kind of do the full, down and back up with his humanity. What do you think of that decision?
I think that it could work. Like this sequence, not this. Well, actually, no. This whole sequence, I think, works. Showing like his reaction to what it would be like to be a robot cop.
You freak you out, huh?
Yeah, it's just like, I like this, and then putting in the inhibitor that they've got to get him back to what you're expecting, right? I think that that's pretty good. I like that. But it's just not quite handled the same way. I wanted that. I don't want him to like have the will for the love of his family to overcome the programming, and he's just kind of reverts back to himself. I wanted the slow, methodical, original like development of the man overcoming the machine.
Yeah.
I don't want him to have an inhibitor that's keeping him from being himself. I want it so that they straight up removed it, and there's nothing else he can't just turn it off. He has to slowly build himself back.
Well, that's where I think that you even could have taken that route where right away this was just the corporate idea of, okay, so to get around this law, if we make everybody, just think that it's a dude who's, been saved by robotics, then we can kind of, this is our loophole, right? Legally. And they start with as simple as that, and kind of corporate cynicism and greed and, trying to look out for themselves and work around, legal stuff. And then, and then have the character Murphy fight that. Is that kind of what you're, I don't know, is it,
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going for. Is that like it would be the same um it would be the same evolution that you see in the original, essentially, but done through Joel Kinnaman in this movie. And I think that it could have just worked a lot better and been more satisfying, because just having him being this like, I'm so scared and a little whiny, I'm type of thing. I don't know. It just
yeah.
doesn't work for me.
This scene is
Um,
genuinely effective, though. Like, again, as much as I don't love the kind of V-shaped arc they have on his character in this one around versus kind of just a climb, this was a genuinely effective scene, I felt.
okay, I remember this in theaters, and I'm just like, oh crap, they're really, because I hadn't seen the original at the time. I thought that the whole Robocop thing was that he was in a suit. Okay, I thought that he was a man who was in a suit. I didn't know that he was like stripped away to almost nothing. Whereas this, I was just like, oh my gosh, they took his balls.
Yeah.
Like, this is genuine body horror.
Yeah. And this is where, like, can you imagine trying to process the reality of this if you were looking at yourself in a mirror and this is what you like? But this is where I feel like you can imagine what it would be like to just be anybody seeing yourself through that, but they haven't done a good job of making you understand what it would be like for a guy like Murphy. Like, again, we were talking about this earlier, the sympathy for his character as portrayed, for him to be going through this, it's a very generic, like, just for anybody going through this would be crazy, but not anything personally connected to him.
I almost feel like he'd be too resilient. Um, like, I feel like he would be the perfect one to be in there because of his attitude and everything like that. And I almost want a character who has to really grow and be
Yeah.
like, I can't do this. I'm not a tough guy, but now he has to be, and I like that idea better.
Yeah. This is also a minor thing. I get conceptually why having him have a real hand is some kind of like a connection point, but he should still he should still have a protective glove most of the time, because what he's doing, that hand would get torn up. It's a totally minor
Right?
thing, but it always bugged me a little bit. Like, you should throw a glove on that thing when you're doing actual police work, because you're gonna tear up your hand, man.
100%.
There's a reason why special ops guys wear gloves.
Yeah. I love the idea of them being able to do this solely because he signed the consent forms. Like, that's one of those dystopian bureaucracy things
Oh yeah.
that that is terrifying. Like, he didn't
Oh
read the terms and conditions,
yeah.
and
Read the
now
fine
he's
print.
stuck in, yeah.
Yeah, you literally have signed your life away to a corporation, and they legally can do anything to you. Like, you're their property. Like, you somehow almost sign away
Mhm.
your sentient rights.
Yeah. I read a book that had something like that in it. Guy had an insurance policy where he saves himself in a jar, but then the company goes under and they sell off their assets, which includes the brain in the jar.
Is that a
And he
Futurama
wakes up like
episode?
a
This
hundred
feels like.
years later, and almost, yeah. No, this is called the Bobaverse.
Okay.
It'd be like science fiction. They're pretty good. Learned about von Neumann probes. A little too quippy for some, but I think they're good. Recommend the audiobook.
Okay.
Really funny impressions of Admiral Akbar in that thing. You'd
I
enjoy that
also
book series, I think. Though they are very anti-theist. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think that would
I
be.
was gonna say, the logo made me think about this with Omnicorp in this phone call.
Hmm.
Omnicorp doesn't really have a personality as a corporation in this movie either. It's just the military industrial complex, kind of thing that, has a foundation so that they can point to something and say, look, we see we're doing some good over here, but we really just, make our profit fighting wars.
Yeah, I thought the same thing in the way that, like, not necessarily comparing it to Omnicorp from the original, but more looking at major tech companies today, where there's a feel and a vibe to them, and something you can instantly recognize. Like, if this was I mostly attributed this, weirdly enough, even though they're not, and that I know of, super strongly involved in the military industrial complex. It's like Meta. Okay,
Yeah.
this didn't feel like Meta to me.
No,
This
yeah.
this didn't feel like Tesla. This didn't feel like even Raytheon or something like that, you know?
Well, it feels very generic. Like just kind of money and ambition.
Yeah. And it's too like clean. There was, even though the corporate stuff in the other one, they looked fairly cleaned up, there was also just like kind of a grittiness and
Yeah.
greasiness about it.
Well, and
Even Jay Burchell's character in here doesn't feel appropriately greasy, even though he's supposed to.
yeah. Well, and this is a weird thing for me to say if you know me. It needs more profanity. Like the corporate guys, they need to be just kind of crude and profane a little bit more. They just don't
He
care about anything but their own their own profits, their own ideas. They're just douchebags.
needed more cocaine.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I don't know if you. This is a very famous show at this point. I have watched all of it, but uh, I say that Secession, the HBO show. Did you ever watch any of that?
No, not my thing.
Okay. So, yeah, and you're right. It's not your thing, but they definitely get that modern American corporate culture thing down well in that show of just these kind of all these people are awful. They're just kind of all a-holes. And
Yeah.
it gets that part nailed. And this movie didn't. Again, this movie should have been rated R. It just should have been rated R.
Yeah. In fact, they had like corporate people watching the director to make sure that
Oh,
he didn't direct an R-rated movie because of how badly
I
he wanted
hate
to.
everything
Which
you
is,
just said.
oh.
Sorry, I hate everything you
What did
just
he
said about
say? I
that
missed
gun.
it. I wasn't paying any attention.
So
What did he say to it?
I
What did he
just
say to
talked
it?
over you. Oh, just the whole. Here it is. It's a 50 round, a 50 caliber 30 round clip. You see clip 50 rounds, 50 caliber, which is ridiculous in a pistol like that. And and then he goes into fully auto or 3 round burst. Like literally, there's no single fire, dude. It's also just the most generic, stupid looking gun I've ever seen on film. And just the idea that I I know what size 50 caliber bullets are. It's so stupid. And they talk about that later in the like multiple times like 50 caliber is like the magic caliber that will get through him. And then they're like, "Oh yeah,
I mean, a
okay."
50 caliber BMG would, but when you're talking about 50 caliber in handgun, it's very different.
It is. But
Like because I think that that's supposed to be somewhat of a reference to the fact that the original gun was supposed to be
it was a Barrett.
a no, the original gun was a Barrett, but it was supposed to be a Desert Eagle, and the Desert
Oh,
Eagle is
yeah.
chambered
In
in
50 yeah, it
50
is.
cal.
It's just it's
So I think that might be a to it. But 30 rounds of 50 cal, 30 rounds of 50 cal wouldn't even fit inside the gun if it was hollow.
yeah. It's just and
Like,
it's just a super generic and it's the idea that you have a 30 round mag and you don't have any single shot options, it's just it's such a Hollywood gun thing in this movie, and I don't like any of the firearm stuff. And again, this has been talked about by other people. We're not being original here at all, but there's nothing memorable about his firearms. He's got a taser and just some generic gun that has specs that are total BS, and it doesn't have a distinct
yeah.
sound or distinct look or anything. It's just boring.
But this is the movement here that he does
Mm,
is quite good.
it's good.
Also, this is my favorite variation on the costume in the whole thing. They're deciding to paint it black was infuriating. If anything, as a cop, they should have made him like slightly blue.
Yeah. I also love that
Though
he
I
doesn't
do,
have the red. That it's just the visor's more plain. I kind of, and again, it looks very cool in the poster to have the red visor, on the black, the red vision thing on the black visor. But it's just makes them look like the robots. Again, Caravan of Garbage says this all the time, but he does. He looks just like the robots.
yeah. He looks just like the robots. I don't like the black. I think that it makes him look far less distinctive.
Oh man, he opens up with
And
sorry. The fact that he that should have been a single shot. That would have been so much more effective to be like, I'm shooting a guy holding a kid. That one to the head. It just is so much more dramatic and effective cinematically versus this it's just sorry,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff bugs me.
no, it bugs me as well. One of the things that I do like the idea of, though, that I think could have made the movie visually distinctive, especially this version of the character, is if they had um if dang it, words are not coming out of my mouth correctly. I like that they had him actually dual wielding.
Yeah.
I normally hate guns akimbo. I even mentioned this in the previous video because there's the moment when Murphy, before he's turned into Robocop, goes akimbo and
Yeah.
is firing with both hands, which is a terrible way to do it. If you're a freaking robot cop,
Oh,
that's
do it.
good. Like, that makes sense where they're even like, he's able to do this, and they could even, these are corporate assholes, right? They could even sit there and go, no, let him keep it. Like, let him keep the two guns. That's going to look really cool. People are going to like him for this. We're going to use that for branding. Like, it would work so well.
Yeah. And I like that he's, his movement is cool with kind of the one tucked back. Yeah, he it looks good. And yeah, you're right. When you are, a robot, the idea that now you have twice, the options as far as, and also the idea of like one lethal, one non-lethal. Like, I mean, there's something cool about that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a year later. I do enjoy the idea of we're trying to compare the efficiency. And like, this is a good conversation here. Just like, I like all this. And I like Michael Keaton's reaction to it. But again, they talk about how the efficiency is somehow better. Like this is the reason to strip the humanity out of him. I feel like, again, this was all filler that they went down this whole rabbit hole of like, make him, awake, fully human, and then strip it back because it's not as efficient. And then make it come back and not really show what that's okay. I just thought of this. When it comes back, they don't really, because as he's still crazy effective as RoboCop, but they don't explore why or like how that works. Like what? Okay, so yeah, a man wouldn't be as crazy fast and efficient as a pure machine. But what are the benefits, maybe, and the decision making and feeling more attached to the scenario? Like, it doesn't explore it in any interesting way, to me at least.
No, I very much agree. I had very similar thoughts. Again, that's one of those things where it jumps up to me as, oh, this is just another one of those movies that introduces the interesting concepts, because that was the hook that made people pay attention to it in the first place. But now it's being washed down, diluted. That's the word I was looking for. Diluted into something that a 7-year-old could understand and sit there and go, oh, without having to actually work for it, and have very little risk to your investments, because it's all about the investors.
Yeah, I think they were going in the right direction of these decisions being made purely because of kind of the corporate needs and the corporate desires, but it wasn't delivered as slimy and greedily as it should have been, and they just followed, they fell short. This is another one of those trailers. I do love we have the tiny little bit of a homage to the original suit here, with kind of the more straight lines. I hate this so much. The lights.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Right?
I love
It's
Michael
funny,
Keaton's
though.
reaction to this. It's really embarrassing.
Yeah.
I do like this though, because there is something true. The idea of like focus groups are only take most things that people love, somebody thought of and gave it to them, and they didn't realize how cool it was until they were presented with it. So like, there's actually some real marketing that they're talking about here in an interesting
Oh
way.
yeah, and I love that.
Yeah,
I actually really liked that scene. I wanted it to be longer. I wanted them to like make that funny, make the focus group thing kind of interesting.
yeah.
Um,
But like I said, it was
and
just
have
done
them
for
go
a trailer
through
line of
more
Make It Black.
variations and options.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
you're right. Yeah, they should have had some more fun with it, because I mean, some of those meetings are crazy. But then it really seemed like they just wanted the scene in order to get that trailer line of "Let's go with black" or whatever he says.
Yeah, which having to kind of justify this massive change to the character that way. I get it. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
This could have been, you know what this could have been? This could have been the $6 billion man if they really wanted it to.
Yeah. See, I actually,
Not sully the name of Robocop.
yeah, this always interesting. Whenever they go to his vision, they have kind of the red line above and below it.
Mm.
So this whole sequence, I mean, again, I feel like this is a corporate note of like, hey, there was a scene in the first one where he went through a warehouse, and there's a lot of twisting and turning as he's like shooting up and down and left and right, and it's really cool. We should do that. And so then they're like, well, we can do that. Let's do it as a training sequence instead of, because in the first movie there is no training sequence. He just, his kind of opening is that memorable and kind of hilarious opening night as a cop where he shoots the guy in the dick and
Yeah.
has a lot of those.
I
Those
feel like
memorable lines.
they wanted to have their big action set piece. They wanted to show things off like that, but they didn't want him actually being out there just killing a whole bunch of guys. That might be like police politics. That might be trying to keep it from having an R rating. I don't know. But this sequence bothers me because we talked about this earlier. He and the robots look too similar.
Yeah.
So it's hard to even tell them apart sometimes.
Yeah.
And also, I disagree. I actually like the visor with the red line. I think it looks cool.
Oh, I think it looks cool. I just like
think
the silver better.
I agree to an extent. I think that I love the silver suit more than I like this black suit, okay? I personally think that they should have done kind of an in-between where he has a little bit of the darker suit, but give him that glass faceplate that's black with the red line through it. I actually think they should have made him bluer, a little bit less silver, almost more, forgive my heresy here, but like Robocop 2, Robocop 3 blue.
Interesting.
Because I think that would I think that would have the boys in blue, cops wearing blue represented by blue type of feel to it. And
Well,
I think
if you
that
had
would have been more
had-
appropriate and it would have been more visually distinctive.
Well, I think that I could see a version where they start with the really faithful, just silver and black as an homage. That's what he wakes up with, and then the revision is more of he's going to be a cop. So you kind of blue steel it up. You introduce, instead of actual flashing sirens, you go with, let's put some lighting on him and have some blue and red lighting accents, and you can do red in the visor and find some other way to have blue where it's more subtle but very kind of cop-esque. And I mean, I could see a version of that would work and be cool.
Yeah. I also really don't want them going anywhere near like the Iron Man from Avengers 1 type of highlights and LEDs coming out of every crack and every pore.
Yeah.
That just bugs me so much.
No, you definitely could overdo it, but I think if you found a way to say have the visor be red and have something subtly blue in just the shoulders and that's it, something that would look subtle enough to be cool but not, anyways.
No, the black just looks really generic.
Yeah.
I can't even necessarily think of a character that he looks like, but it feels so much like, oh, what if you were making RoboCop just after The Matrix came out? But this was also 2014, and we had all these superhero movies coming out, like Batman and all the Avengers movies and everything, and they're just like, I don't know, it feels like a really bad Batman costume.
Yeah. It reminds me of like Arkham Knight in the Batman, Arkham Knight game. But
It's my favorite Batman movie.
What I mean though is the Arkham Knight character in that game. It looks kind of similar
Mm.
with the kind of glass faceplate. But the I also too multiple times in this sequence with
Mhm.
his human hand, he literally was like ripping robots apart with it. He if you
Huh.
watch through that sequence again, he grabs, literally reaches with his right hand, his human hand, and rips the head off of one of the combat robots. And it's like, okay, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No, it wasn't a terrible sequence. I actually did kind of like the music to it. Um, Pardon me if you heard my cat there. Um, I like the music to it. I think that was actually kind of a good and interesting touch. But I don't know, the whole thing just could have been better.
Yeah.
And I really do kind of wish that they had kept his wife and son separate. You know?
Hmm. Well, and I mean, the first movie showed this. You could have that connection without them in person. I'm not saying they should have done that, but it's easy to do it. I think if you're going to do it, you could have done a better job. And we already talked about this earlier, so I want to rehash it all. But again, I think that the son is the much stronger connection in this scene coming up here when he comes in, and he has way more connection with his son than his wife.
Yeah. Um, I think that the idea of them just the conversion process took so long that they just straight up moved on.
Yeah.
I think is a little bit stronger. I think that the idea of him going back to what he was is a weaker storyline than him becoming something entirely new
Well, also is just
and
not a
having
real.
to begin again.
It's not a real sci-fi storyline too. I mean, yeah, he should be. There should have to be this acceptance of like a change, because this movie kind of ends with a. Again, it's inferred, and they never did a sequel. And who knows what they would have done with it? But yeah, it's like, oh, he's back on the force, and his family's reunited, and is like, okay, well, what does that marriage look like now? Like
Hopefully he has something that vibrates.
yeah. But like, yeah, those are real questions, and yeah, him having to deal with the reality, he kind of gets a reset in a way at the end of this. I mean, obviously he's still a cyborg, but he doesn't actually lose much other than some anatomy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is one of my absolute chief complaints about this movie is that I wanted him to lose more, which I know is a really weird thing to say.
Yeah. Well, it's more effective. But
Yeah.
this scene, I actually do think. I think this scene is effective. I like that they have his head up out of frame here, and it just really, it's a well framed shot with his son kind of looking at him, and then when he does kneel down here and just, he says exactly what like a kid his age, especially a young boy his age, would be like, you know, kind of scared, but also like intrigued, and like, this is cool, but I'm also freaking out a little bit, and come check it out.
Yeah.
I think this is played pretty good, actually, this scene. Even though I don't like the story decisions, I like this scene.
But even then you have this the black doesn't look good in this
No.
scene. It's too dark. It's
Well,
too slick.
You said it well. He looks like a alternate version 2049 Batman or something.
Yeah. He looks like if Iron Man went through a goth phase. And there's a reason why War Machine was never black. The suit, anyway. Because the like it's hard to make something look dynamic like that. You can make it look threatening and slick in certain scenes, but it doesn't stand out. It's not iconic. It's not something that you instantly see a color or a silhouette of and be like, oh,
Well,
yeah,
it's all the
I know
same.
what that is.
It's all the same color black. Like, there's a few traces of a little bit glossy, but it mostly is just matte black with a few shiny bits and some red lights.
Which is not what you want to do, ladies and gents.
This looks like really good generic cosplay.
Oh yeah, that's true. And he wore a lot of suits in this thing. The actor, he did a really good and intense job with all of this, and they did end up virtually recreating him in CG for the majority of it, which is kind of technically cool. But you can see in his facial acting that he is uncomfortable, and I
Yeah.
think they did that on purpose.
Well, I think it's effective
Um,
because he should always look a little bit uncomfortable, especially at the beginning here.
yeah,
Like if you have a couple sequels, I can see getting to the point where where he just gets more used to it. But at the beginning, he should be always looking a little bit kind of grimacy.
yeah. I really, um, I like Joel Kinnaman. I thought that after the Suicide Squad, or Suicide Squad, I should say, 2016 Suicide Squad, I was just kind of gonna hate him always because his character was so bland in that movie. This is Katana. She's got my back. And then they came out with The Suicide Squad, and he was such a great character in that, and he had so much personality. He was so fun.
Yeah,
I liked it.
I genuinely felt bad when he died in that second one,
Right?
and a lot of that was
And they
because
carried that
he
over to the
was
Peacemaker show. It was pretty good.
yeah. I also I do not like that even at the police headquarters, he's got like this massive Apple store room that he's like in the middle of, and everything's pushed way out, and I don't know, it's you there's no way I would believe that this is actually inside of a functioning police station. One, that they would have room for this,
Mm-hmm.
and two, it just doesn't fit
Yeah.
the again, it's just a generic, it doesn't have any personality to the set. Like I get that like the cold lab of like Omnicorp in some place in China, but now that we're at Chicago PD, it should feel different, and it doesn't.
Yeah, and because I mean, think of again the original. Where did they have him stored? He was in a freaking evidence locker that had just been converted into a makeshift lab. It was
Yeah.
genius. Loved that.
This whole sequence, though, the idea of like, let's give you the whole database. I mean, sorry, totally going to rip off Caravan Garbage here, but I love it. Which is does anybody who's ever worked with a computer run an update right before they have to do something important with their computer? It's a bad idea.
You're talking to a former Windows system administrator here, and dealing with the updates and all that stuff. You always have to do all kinds of testing. You have to do the threat testing. You have to do the screen testing. You don't just shove something in there and be like, all right, it's good to go. I mean, I was in charge of like meeting facilitation and audio visual running for those, which was a pain in the butt. These big corporate meetings of all these people worked for the state of California, had to make sure everything was connecting properly to people on the other side of the country, and yada yada yada. And I had to do all this testing beforehand just to make sure that the updates didn't screw something up every single time they had a meeting. And the idea of just like shoving that in there, oh god, it kills me.
Yeah. Well, and then
You didn't need
this
that whole
is like
rant,
the
but you
story.
got it anyway.
Well, like this is the story catalyst to also like, take his humanity down to almost nothing to just make him function.
Yeah.
Like, because they already did the whole, like, when he's in combat mode, his visor goes down. They already had that whole conversation during the training sequence. And then now he just loses it almost all the time anyways by just kind of taking his emotions away, essentially. And
Yeah.
it's,
It seemed like a really unnecessary step.
yeah. Well, this is like, as much as this isn't an overly long movie, and you said this before we started recording, and I agree with you, efficiency for efficiency's sake does not make a movie better. But there is something to efficient storytelling when it's done well. And this movie drags out in a few spots in ways that are completely unnecessary. And it's not a crazy
Yeah,
long movie.
like-
I mean, this is just a little under 2 hours, but yeah.
This right here, I don't mind this at all, especially when you know what you're talking about with the whole dopamine thing. It's a fascinating idea that you'd be able to theoretically control that with humans, and it's terrifying. And I don't know. I really like the intention, I guess. I really like the intent that they have. It's just not the execution, you know? Mostly because if this was any other movie than Robocop, it'd be like, okay, you know what? Fine, I'll give it to him. but it's RoboCop. We have the blueprint,
Yeah.
and the blueprint has been ignored.
Yeah. This is I do like this moment of just the whole like, immediately something's wrong. Like, what is going on? And the idea that he's just like scanning them and just like, all right, no threat, move. I feel like this is kind of an effective way. But this is the kind of stuff that I think if you were going to have this, whether you're going to have his family in it or not, or just people he knew, to kind of start with him in this state,
Mm.
like we talked about earlier, have this be how he comes out of the whole procedure, and then have to, find what he gets back to at the end of this film.
You know what would be kind of interesting and something that I would consider doing if I was writing it? Sorry, what was it? What were you saying?
No, go ahead.
I would have it so that he comes out in this state, but they're just like, oh, well, we want him to be able to do X, Y, and Z with the family so people can see he's still human and a family man. And they actually create an artificial personality that they can control better in order to trick the people.
Yeah.
I think that that'd be a much more interesting thing. Then he has to kind of get out of that and like prove to his family that he still is. If you want to even keep going with the family, which I've already said my piece on that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I do like this. I think that this is effective.
Yeah.
Of him like almost their intentions backfiring and like, oh, we're gonna upload the entire criminal database into him, and then first thing he does is jump out like that and do it. And they have to do a PR spin on it, and that would kind of fit with the themes of the movie a bit better.
Yeah. Oh man. But again,
and you definitely know that Samuel L. Jackson filmed his scenes in like a day.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They had him 1 or 2 days on a green screen and just just went with it. There's probably a lot of interesting footage somewhere of just him doing versions of these takes. But again, here
Right?
that we're using the newscaster to comment on the plot, essentially.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Like, yeah. Let's talk about the earthquake in California that sunk Los Angeles. Let's talk about the space station that fell out of the sky and hit somebody. Just like at least they'll have beachfront property.
Well, and two, I think this would have been, if you were going to go this route with the newscaster, the Novak element should have. And I'm trying to remember if this is a throwaway line somewhere that I've missed, but that he actually is like somehow tied to Omnicorp and actually like their kind of unofficial like PR in a way. I don't know, like that there's a very real conflict of interest here in his reporting.
Yes. No, I always kind of assumed it was that way, to be honest, just because that's what I'm used to seeing, and you're pretty used to seeing it in today's world. You can see corporate bias in today's today's media.
So much of, especially when you're driving the amount of content that news has to have these days, 24-hour news channels and news websites and stuff, that it's that they are about making money like everybody else does, so they need to make sure people are watching, and needing people to watch is more important than than anything else, which is one of the biggest biases that exists right there. I mean, we could talk about the money, and I don't care if you're right leaning or left leaning. That is a problem in all information sources these days. But anyways, this whole Gary Oldman here, as he kind of plays complicit. He is not plays. He is complicit in lying to her and kind of manipulating her, but at the same time, like, he's not an evil person, but he plays like a lot of shades of gray in this movie. And having him go to like basically just because I wonder if it's he's being somewhat used because they know that he's somebody who will come across more genuine, how much he's aware of that versus not. I mean, as much as I like his portrayal, I feel like they could have maybe done a little bit more character development of kind of his internal conflict, because he has his turn later and decides to just go full on, I'm going to help him.
Like, what are his goals right now? Why
yeah,
is it that he's so complicit in this? Are they like threatening to never let him work again? Maybe he had some ethical crimes in the past that he's trying to overcome. Something like that, you know?
yeah. You could have, as much as he's great, it could have done better. Like we were saying, they could have done better with exploring his morality and the motivations behind what he's doing and why he's doing it.
hmm And here you have some of the good like movements, you know.
Yeah.
But you have this very obvious fake personality going on, and it's a really tough sell, in my opinion. Um, I think that they
Well, he's not
again
acting like a
the
normal human.
regression.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just the regression from where he was.
Yeah.
Like they should have started him at that point, I guess. We just wasted so much time of the movie with him being like, I could be a man and body horror, you know?
Yeah. Well, and we're just finally getting to him being a cop. I mean, you know, we're well past the halfway
Over
mark
halfway
in this
done.
film, and he's just now starting to do some cop stuff.
And he hasn't even shot anybody in the dick.
Well, one other thing too, I hate every instance in this film of using some of the iconic lines from the first movie. You know, during the training sequence, or where is it that I
The
wouldn't buy
initial
I wouldn't
virtual testing.
yeah, I wouldn't buy that for $1. It's like it's so just like it's thrown
Yeah.
out there like barely anything, and then at the very very end, when we get to that climactic scene where he says dead or alive, it's not. Again, we've talked about Joel doing a good job in this role, but I don't like his delivery of that line, and its placement in the plot is weird. It just doesn't. It really feels like it was forced.
Yeah. They only put it in there because they needed to have it in there, and they could have done so much better with it.
I appreciate his trigger discipline, by the way.
Yes, that is actually something that I noticed as well. Good trigger discipline.
Well, I mean, we do get a drug lab,
Those of you.
shootout again here, so.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
though,
Everybody loves a good shoot up at a drug lab.
they like, did they just watch the original and go like, hey, he shot up a drug lab, we should, but again, there's none of the personality. I mean, the original movie, that the precursor to this sequence was that fantastic scene where Kirkwood Smith and the drug lord and like the glass of wine and guns, guns, guns. I mean, there's so much personality and fun stuff going on, and then you have this great busting in Robocop, and there's just squib works over the top, and you see the the powder from the cocaine up in the air everywhere, and this is just, it's very generic.
Yeah, just generic shooting guys. I also don't like that all of the bad guys are just doing the same things. They're all just dudes who stand there with gun, and a lot of them are like doing weird shoulder fire that's not like ADS shoulder fire, which I don't care for. And he's just like, man standing, I shoot, man standing, I shoot.
Yeah.
I want there to be a little bit more variety and like, this guy's going to attack in this way, this guy's going to attack in this way. Maybe somebody's going to throw acid on him. Maybe somebody's going to
You can get creative.
try and drop something heavy on him, and he can like use that to do other shit,
This is also, okay, weird turn here, because we just went from, he goes in, does a drug bust, everybody in the police station's like saying, oh, this worked great. Look at how, how calm and cool and collected he was, and he just took care of it. We're going to make so much money. And then we immediately jump to, see, obviously he doesn't have control, and I need to get in on this because something's broken. I'm like, wait, what was broke? Like,
Yeah.
Was that a good thing he did or bad? Like, it does not, like, I feel like there was a missing scene there somewhere.
No, I agree.
And the idea here that they are taking, instead of a montage of lots of interesting little moments of him out in the city doing police work, instead they kind of hint to a montage in a news show and then go to this, when it's like, all right, if you're going to copy anything, copy him having some interesting encounters with citizens over, throughout the city or something. I mean, that, like, you copied so many things, but you didn't copy that.
Yeah. No, completely agree, and I'm beginning to rethink my statement of, this movie has some really good stuff in it, because I mean, it still does. It's just, it's all just kind of tragic to me that it's so off the mark from what it could have been.
Yeah. Well, I think there is like and I think you said we get to some stuff. There's sequences that work, and I think that both of us see potential in the creatives involved. The design work had some genuine potential there. You had some interesting bits here and there that just needed to be tweaked, and there's it's just, I think this is a movie that really can be summed up with wasted potential.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oh, makes me sad.
I do appreciate the oh, we don't have any more time, here in a second, when he because that absolutely happens. I've never understood news shows that people like get invited to come on and like defend their side when they know they're not going to be given an actual like opportunity to say anything of note, and they're going to be just dismissed because they're immediately out of time. It's just like, who would volunteer for that, thinking they're going to make any kind of a difference? It's
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's weird, but there are reasons to it. Most of it being the fact that like a bunch of these talking heads that you've got, like there's even been a couple of hot mic catches in recent years where newscasters who are really big in that area, people like John Oliver or Bill Mayer and stuff like that, they don't believe half the stuff they talk about.
Yeah.
They don't actually tout this stuff as truth. It's they don't actually believe what they tout as truth because it's the part that they play. So they'll gladly go on to another show if it's going to be paying them $500,000 if it means that they get humiliated in public, because they're already going to get humiliated in public because people don't like them if they're not on the same side.
Well, and that's where, again, okay, so if you want to lean into that just very cynical worldview of corporate and news culture, then great, do it. But they don't do it here.
Nope. Nobody doing it. How do you feel about the bike?
It's fine. It's not very practical. You can't really arrest anybody. He has to like stay there and just like, does he tase him and then just leave him in the street for like a regular cop to come get? Or, I feel like,
They really are going Batman on him, aren't they?
They are. I mean, it's, again, the bike is super generic. It just looks like a stripped down Ducati.
I'm not the biggest fan of Ducati to begin with.
Yeah, like it's just generic. It looks, it's like it fits his suit, which is not a compliment. It's just black. It's a lot of black with a few lights on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sitting here. I'm thinking like, what would I put him on? Right? I was making this movie. I want him to be able to zip around really fast. This is a couple years after Dredd came out, and I honestly think that there was a lot of influence from Dredd in this movie. I think that the director wanted to make Robocop Dredd. Which, if you haven't seen that, go back and listen to our previous episode on Dredd from 2012, starring Carl Urban.
And you
who
definitely
also only acted with his lower jaw.
Yeah. Well, and didn't famously the writers or the producers actually use that comic series to help sell their vision of RoboCop, the original one, to the original director?
I believe that they did.
Yeah.
Maybe because it was the 1000 AD comics, which Dredd was in 1000 AD. If it was actually a Dredd comic book, then maybe.
Whole like you just get a jaw.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I didn't even really put that together, that Dredd was in 1000 AD comics, and that was part of the pitch to Verhoeven.
Yeah. I mean, I remember in multiple behind the scenes them talking about that. But
well, bust my buttons. I didn't even put it together.
Oh, having a trigger point is interesting, and I feel like I remember in the first movie really finding the music was really good. There's a lot of things that are really good about it. When he goes back to his old home that's like for sale, and he's like walking through and finding bits and pieces, and the television that kind of like selling his home. Like there's not a realtor in the future. It's just TV stations in every room.
Yeah.
Like the idea of him going in like the kind of goofiness of the whole, Batman Detective Vision is whatever. But the idea of him almost kind of, this is the starting point of him like solving his own murder is an interesting idea. But again,
I do like that idea.
But they
it's
did
too
that.
little too late.
But and they did that in the first one. But it's not even in this film they don't sell that there was anything personal about it. That there was like a very memorable face, looked him in the eye, laughed, and shot him.
Yeah,
he was taken out in a very cowardly way by somebody who was just like it. There's having it not be personal was actually done very effectively in the first movie because it wasn't personal at all. Kirkwood Smith's character couldn't have cared less who or what Alex Murphy was. It was just about, you're a cop, and I just so sadistically bad that I just love the idea that I get to murder a cop, and that's his whole thing, And he's just, and this one's like, I don't, is there a personal connection? But
I refer to that today as just UC Berkeley.
Yeah, well, and they even have the scene near the beginning of this where he's he's not that dead. He doesn't look that bad there. It's funny. It looks like he like had
80% of his body.
Yeah, he looks like the kind of guy who had a oil catch on fire on the stove in front of him, and that's it. Anyways, the scene earlier where he even was like, the bad guy was like, if I kill a cop, I'm going to be spending my whole life and looking over my shoulder. It's like, wait a minute, so you're like a cautious criminal that's kind of hesitant about killing a cop? I mean, that is the polar opposite of just the gleeful, sadistic, evil man that was in the first one that everybody remembers.
I think that part of it is, and again, this was pre-2020, mind you, but there was still a lot of anti-cop sentiment in the target audience, as they're often referred to as, or the modern audience. So I think that had something to do with it, is that they didn't want to focus too much on the actual, like, cops and the idea of killing cops being, this is going to sound terrible, the idea of killing cops being a terrible thing. That's my personal...
Yeah, and you might be right, and that's
theory.
but that all kind of this was not clear to me that this was a flashback for like right away. Like it took me a second when I was watching this to be like, oh, it's a flashback. But that's part of that whole, again, that kind of corporate creative culture where you just you have a vision made by committee that's like has all these considerations to be made, and there was not a single. Somebody had a vision for what a remake of RoboCop could be, and they executed it. Like they're just, and I don't know actually
they
very
all got into a room and said, "We have the rights to this. How do we make a movie that'll fit in with Marvel fans?"
Yes,
I genuinely believe that that's the case.
Yeah, and for better or for worse, most of the best films are made by. I do love this, by the way, that he like immediately has access to. You don't have kids, and your wife left you, so shut up. It's a creative way to use his access to information. But anyways, when you so this is where I don't know this director honestly at all. Do you know off the top of your head what else he did? If there's something else of note that he made or directed?
Jose Padilla?
Yeah.
Well, he hasn't done a lot. He did things like the Narco series. That was a really big one. That
was good.
He was like a main writer and producer for that one. His actual directing is a little bit less. Again, he did some Narcos. He did this. But otherwise, it's really pretty small. He did shortly before this movie, he had done a movie called Elite Squad 2: The Enemy Within. Starring Wagner Morna.
Okay, so this scene, I've been waiting for this scene because I really find this particular action sequence to be even more egregious than the very small drug lab scene earlier in the training scene, which is fine, but again, we already talked about that. This scene, we got all these set up here of like, they're prepared and they have explosives on the hallway, and that they actually know what it'll take to penetrate his his armor and aiming for the head. And I get that they wanted to do something with night vision, but again, the criminals act stupid here because night vision doesn't benefit them at all. Robocop has all the advantages by going, it's entirely a stylistic choice that doesn't make any sense because what are they going to like impair him by turning the lights out? And for them, as humans, night vision with gun flashes is horrible. You end up actually, getting those flashes of, heat and light, which make it harder to focus. And it's so generic looking. I just recently rewatched Sicario with my father-in-law because he had never seen it, and I was like, "Oh, you should see this." And the whole final like sequence with the heat vision and the thermal vision, where they kind of show like the FBI are using traditional green night vision, and then the Spec Ops guys are using thermal vision. But this is it's just returning. It's all fully auto. He doesn't do a single reload, which bugs me. It's just you have the video game-ness of this, like, as his target reticle is like popping around. He's taking hits. I do appreciate that. But this is boring. This is so generically boring to me. And I love a good action. I will talk about good gun scenes all day long. And we are like in like this golden age of action sequences where, stunt work and gun work is being really elevated by some really interesting creative, types. And I mean, John Wick is kind of the big obvious one, but there's a lot of other examples, some of them even better, honestly. But this
came out
a video
before
game
John Wick. Could you imagine how this could have been if John Wick had already come out? Do you imagine what they could have done with Robocop?
Oh, yeah.
Post John Wick? Oh, my goodness.
And even here, like, I appreciate that they're, like, hitting him a few times here. But even there, like, they say, okay, so here's the right caliber to use, and you can take him down. And so he gets hit. It seems like he goes down for a second, and then it's like pause, and then... No, he's back up. He's fine. It didn't actually do anything. It didn't actually penetrate. So did it mean anything? And then he sits there and he just, I could rant about this action scene. To me is like the culmination of everything wrong with like this era's gun action scene. It's vanilla, it's plain, it's generic. I kind of hate it.
Yeah. And they're sitting here, he's using an MP7, which is, I don't even think it's in production anymore. They're talking about how it's 50 cal and there's just nothing to it. It's like nothing in there would be 50 cal. Were all of those rifles chambered in 50 caliber handgun? Because they definitely weren't chambered in 50 caliber BMG.
Yeah.
Those were not anti-material rifles.
Well, and like right there, the cop pulled out what looked like a Desert Eagle. And Robocop clearly has damage to him here. And he's got that hole, right, and the damage to his shoulder and everything. Like, so did he just get really lucky that the only people who hit him were shooting, 9mm Parabellum? Because that wouldn't do anything to him. Yeah.
Parabellum, thank you. Couldn't think of that word.
Yeah, it's... And this, the whole idea of like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to really, I'm going to confront you in the middle of, kind of, it's weird too that some of them are using very like current guns, like the kinds that were actively in production in 2014, and randomly some of the other handguns are like futuristic looking. Like his partner's gun is like generic future pistol, and then these guys are pulling out Desert Eagles and like Glocks, and at the beginning, Alex Murphy is using a Beretta. I think it's a Storm, a PX4 Storm, but like, it's just sorry. As somebody who enjoys firearms, I kind of hate everything about this movie when it comes to firearms. I know I've ranted more than once at this point, so I'll spare you more, but it bugs me.
This entire sequence, though, of him going after these corrupt cops that helped kill him, I actually really like it. I like the broadcasting. I like the use of it. I like, the kill switch and everything. that whole sequence I think is genuinely one of the best in the movie, and it would have been better if it was R rated.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, way better.
because this like when he shoots that guy, I genuinely believe that the whole stun pistol thing was put in after the fact, or it was a contingency. And there's a version of the movie, at least in somebody's head, where he's like shoots, that wasn't him stunning the guy. That was him straight up killing him.
Yeah, and I would have enjoyed, and it's a shame that, well, so, and this was again brought up by other people, so I don't want to take credit for this thought. And you just mentioned a little bit ago, if this movie had been made after John Wick. Also, I wish this movie had been made after Deadpool. Just not because I want it to be at all like Deadpool, but just because it would have put the thought into an executive's mind that the right appealing R-rated film can make plenty of money. And if this had been a visceral, violent, satirical, just amazing remake with that kind of vision and bravery, it could have gone down as something special and could have absolutely made money. But we hadn't, I mean, gosh, when's the last, I'm trying to think, before Deadpool, like what was the last rated R, like massive hit that just kind of defied expectations and made, I mean, Terminator 2 way back in the 90s did it. And
I was going to say John Wick.
Yeah, John Wick John Wick didn't make tons of money. I mean, the later ones did, but not the first one. But like now,
it made some.
I mean, it did. But I mean, like $100 million on like a $40 million budget or something like that. But it's and the later ones really did well. But this is right before kind of executives were reminded that the right R-rated film can be very profitable.
The biggest
you gotta
ones,
do it right, though.
I think the biggest ones, you said before Deadpool, were the Matrix movies.
That's true.
Yeah.
I forget sometimes that those are rated
and
R.
The Passion, and The Hangover.
The Hangover.
Like
It's just some rated R comedies. That's right.
50 Shades of Grey.
Oh gosh. So rated R soft porn comedies and a Jesus movie. So okay.
Yeah,
but the last
like Saving
action
Private Ryan,
film.
Troy.
Yeah.
Last action film.
But I'm trying to think. I think the last
Terminator 2.
Yeah, I'm about to say. I think Terminator 2 might be the previous film. Like I think that's a sci-fi action film that managed to do gangbusters numbers with an R rating.
Well, you're forgetting The Matrix, and there's also Gladiator.
True.
But either way, you're still looking at like maybe one every 2 years, if that. So it's compared to other movies. I get why they decided to go PG-13, but they were wrong.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally understand in a boardroom, especially because I know the budget for this, went way over budget. Wasn't this like budgeted for 60 and ended up hitting like 100 or something like that? I believe.
Yes, it was. It started at around 60 to 65 million and ballooned to 95 to 100 million. So they're just like, nope. In order to recoup that loss, we have got to make it PG-13. When I'm just like, why don't you hire somebody who's not Samuel L. Jackson? You know? Why are you going to pay all this movie to Michael Keaton?
Because this was also during that kind of research, because Michael Keaton had been kind of dormant for a while. And, this was... And he actually did, right? Didn't he like semi-retire for like 10 years or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but I know he came back. He did Spider-Man Homecoming. He did this. He came back and did...
Birdman.
He did Birdman. Yeah, he won the Oscar for that, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah. So he came kind of roaring
Birdman.
back and was a hot commodity all of a sudden again. And I mean, nothing against him. He's a great actor. But...
Yep.
So whole thing though, okay. So we talked about this briefly, that this movie has a fourth act, basically, right? That we're kind of getting into here.
Yes.
And it's interesting that
we talked about it a little bit last week because it has the curse of the fourth act twist.
But also
they have a twist.
But the twist is like, I'm watching this, and I was right, when I watched this again this week to kind of prepare for this, the twist is also meaningless, because the big twist in the original film is that, the corporate guy is actually connected to the guy who killed him. Like, no,
Hmm.
there's no connection. There is nothing here. It's just, oh, it would be more ideal to kill him, so he's going to be attempted to be, they're going to try to kill him again. It has no connection whatsoever to the first time he was killed. It has no motivation other than just corporate greed. There's no. It's a meaningless twist, and so it's I
Yeah.
just it's meaningless. I don't know if I don't know of a worse insult to say to a plot point other than just being pointless.
Yeah, it is pointless, and it leads into this kind of cascade with Michael Keaton's character because the ending with Michael Keaton just really doesn't make any sense. Like,
No,
he suddenly decides that he's going to get his hands dirty. Like, what?
yeah,
Why?
there's been zero, like, there's been nothing to even remotely hint that he's the kind of corporate guy who would pick up a gun.
Yeah,
And
because in
we
the
have
other one, you
this,
at least had the one guy who got his hands dirty.
yeah. Well, we have and we have here the turn by not even a turn, I would say, but like kind of Gary Oldman's character making a decision to really double down, and also too the idea that we have a vote on the repeal this fast. We don't really have a, like, politics don't move at this speed in America. Um, yeah, even when they move fast, the idea that like this one example would change public opinion, which would then cause a repeal of something. This, I mean, it would just, it's that's a detail that I find, again, they're trying to use that as motivation for why they're pushing, because of the amount of money they have to make. But it's just it's extra stuff, and it just kind of takes me out of it a little bit. And it's also just not the way politics work.
No, no, it's not in the slightest. Um, yeah.
She really tries to give
Um,
this scene some energy, and she's still just like, all right. Would
doesn't
you?
have it. Her body doesn't act. Like, she doesn't move right. Because she's very attractive. She has that. She's this is gonna sound weird. She's almost like thicker. She's not like overweight or anything. It doesn't even appear like necessarily big boned, but she has like a thicker neck and thicker shoulders, and like it's actually I find it attractive.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's nice that she's
but
not a size
her,
2 model.
yeah, her body doesn't move. Like when she acts, she just kind of shifts a little bit instead of acting with her whole body. And is it implying that she is in on this, the like heartless assistant?
Well, I mean, she's helping Gary Oldman. I mean, I think that's the thing where she's.
Okay.
It's weird because she's been very blunt up to this point, but now she's like totally like helping him.
Yeah, which was a little odd to me because she's
They
essentially been this kind of just like wop wop.
they
Here's your terrible
really,
thing that's happening.
yeah, they did the whole perfect timing there of he got to the chip literally seconds before they were gonna like kill him.
Yeah,
I always hate
it
that kind of
doesn't
thing
help
where it's just somebody who was sneaking and then running,
that.
like, got there right at the moment. And
Yeah,
it's just it's one of those like convenient timing things that bugs me a little bit. Even though movies that I absolutely love are guilty of it also. So there's that.
like perhaps Galaxy Quest.
That never
For
happens.
those of you who haven't seen the movie Galaxy Quest, repent, and then go see it. But they have a scene where they think that they're dying because the button's not working, but it turns out that it's because it's programmed to stop at 1, because on the TV show that they had been on, the clock always stopped at 1.
It's great. Oh man. Now, like, again,
But Gary
this.
Oldman like really pours into this scene,
Oh yeah, like I was just about to say. As much as I was just complaining about convenient timing, this scene like is very effective as he's just like he's screaming and trying to wake him up in time and save him, and he sells passion, and and even Murphy's like trying to figure out like what's going on, and he comes back in, and then I like that he doesn't just immediately do what Gary Oldman tells him to do. He actually kind of, Gary Oldman's like trying to still influence him, but he in a second here he goes off and does his own thing again. It's
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah, Gary Oldman's character remains throughout this movie a kind of like very gray area, chaotic. Like, what is he actually gonna do next? Type of thing, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. He tries to get in front of the bike.
Good luck.
I love that they have like this little special garage for just his motorcycle that has a ramp, like a special ramp, and
He doesn't even bottom it out.
no, he doesn't. I mean, there's the whole again in the original one that he takes just a regular old patrol car and does his the same thing he did when he was a regular cop. It's yeah, all those little character beats are gone.
Yeah, I think putting him in some sort of like cool car would have been an interesting idea,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they should have done exactly this, but something Tumblr-esque would have been interesting. Kind of military, like overly industrialized military, like very, like almost like a tank car hybrid type thing. Again, I'm saying the Tumblr because it's what's coming to mind. I'm not saying to make the.
I think the word you're looking for is a Hummer.
Yeah, but sleeker.
Yeah. this is kind of funny. He's just like.
But even this, like,
the whole thing.
why does he need to come with them? Like, why does he need to be on site? Like, why is there any need? Oh no, sorry, I got myself turned around there. I apologize. Robocop is coming to them, so that's why he's warning him to get out. I got myself turned around there. That actually makes perfect sense.
Okay, I was a little bit confused. I'm like, what are you talking about there, buddy? We just watched the thing.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was talking and I missed. I got myself backwards. Yeah. Some of these motorcycle shots are actually pretty cool, though. They're like, when they had this shot earlier of kind of looking up at him, and then these kind of knee shots and over, from his perspective, there's some cool. Driving.
I was literally about to say that I think that the reason why they gave him that thing, the motorcycle, was because of the Dark Knight with the Bat Pod, and getting those shots just because of how cool those shots are.
Yeah. Well, that's where, again, if you're going to be heavily inspired by really good movies, do it better.
Yeah. Right? It's killing me, though. Every time I try and think about something, I want to say this, I want to say this. Fact is, this movie's just not good enough. And it could have been so close to greatness.
Well, that's, I think, what's frustrating about it. If it was just bad, if it was just a bad remake, it would be easier. Mm-hmm. But it's frustratingly bad because it got close in a lot of places, and they just. I do like that. Now that is one thing actually that I think they had a tiny moment there where they almost had it, and the first movie had it, that he's intimidating. He never truly comes across as like, this guy's intimidating. He walks up to you and he's tall and he's menacing and he moves mechanically. Like the reaction to people, the reaction to him by people is a little bit.
It's
tame.
A little bland. Yeah, thank you. Tame, that's better. I do remember thinking that I wish that they had kind of a better finale action sequence, but then when I rewatched this scene, I was like, you know what? This is better than I give it credit for.
Yeah.
This isn't terrible.
It's got a few good beats. I like him using the one for cover. The idea of like get into their legs, like using his size actually is a potent way to defeat them. I do appreciate that they give his partner a way to help in a way that's somewhat realistic, using the whole that these robots, their programming actually works against them by that they won't shoot unarmed people. They kind of use that later is interesting, and yeah, I mean but by no means is this some kind of like masterpiece action sequence, but it's definitely got a few legit good moments.
Yeah, it's got some beats.
Yeah, having to sacrifice his arm here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really like that they have him kind of falling apart. His suit's taking damage. I like you can just see the big holes in him. And wasn't that his stun gun?
No, that's his 50 cal 30 round clip that he's fired about 800 rounds out of. Okay, I still
even have room for it.
Yeah, he takes too many hits here. By the way, though, from like the big guns of these guys.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's just
Yeah.
they lay into him here. I mean, taking a few hits is good, but like he probably takes 50 rounds from these guys and their main guns, which does seem a little like all right.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said. I don't know. I think that these things are almost too competent. I want,
A little
crying
bit of
like a
the
dog Ed 209.
a little goofy. You
He
want the
falls down
foot
the stairs.
twitch. They needed to have a foot twitch moment.
They needed a foot twitch. There's no foot twitch. Um, yeah. I do kind of like this spin that he's giving. That's not a bad story.
Well, he's still
Okay?
acting like
That's a good story to give.
well, yeah, and here he's still acting like just a corporate guy, just like all right, I'm going to save this somehow. I'm going to spin this. I'm going to lie. I don't know, this is fine. It's just
Yeah.
man,
This
he's
is
in rough
what I'm
shape.
talking about. Where would it really have been that difficult to have tied something in where you realize that like this guy is the guy that killed him?
Yeah,
Like there would have been easy ways to incorporate it so that this character is actually his murderer. You know,
yeah, somehow.
somehow there were ways that you could have written it. Jackie Earle Haley is a great actor, despite it being not very good. The remake of Nightmare on Elm Street was good. Not good. It wasn't good, but he was very good as Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Nobody
He was great as
couldn't quite
Rorschach
play it
also.
like the classic, but he was really good as Rorschach. And he's been in several other things. He's just he's a good character actor. I think that's the best way to put it.
You have
Yeah, just can't stop getting shot.
yeah, he really can't. So I think one of the faults too is because they showed his lungs and everything in the middle. I like the damage. Like I think it looks good, but it also just makes like I'm like where is it? Like
Yeah, where are his lungs?
I have trouble believing that he's still moving around with the kind of damage he's sustained, but it's because they showed so much earlier. Like it wouldn't bother me if they hadn't had the scene where they revealed just how much organic stuff is underneath his chest plate.
Yeah.
He's got a gun. We're gonna leave.
No kid, he's a gun robot.
Oh gosh.
But again, you're having these things that take place in the dark, and the result of it is that this suit it doesn't stand out. It doesn't look good. It
No.
needs difference. It needs contrast. That's the word that I'm looking for. It needs contrast.
It does. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, what's funny is that
Yeah.
because of all the damage, it finally looks a little more distinct because the damage is giving it some contrast and some character.
yeah.
Like, but even that still, if you had black damage against, the silver, it would look way better.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that was part of the point, though. Maybe it'd be way more expensive to do it that way.
I do love I'm from marketing. Oh,
Right?
That's good. So,
I have a question for you.
oh,
Sorry, keep going.
I was just going to say, sorry. I hate that uses the line. It's so, he delivers it so like half-heartedly. And I get the context of the scene is that he's like struggling, but it's just dead or alive, you're coming with me. It's almost like a whiny delivery.
I think that if they had had him use it again, like as he's gaining control, instead of having that I'm malfunctioning, dead or alive, you're coming with me, and then having a secondary dead or alive, you're coming with me right there, where it's confident and it's hard hitting.
Oh, and that could have definitely helped.
Redeemed it for me to an extent. Now, the question I have for you: do you think that this would have actually worked better as a sequel?
Um, with some rewrites, it could have. I mean, I do think the idea of a legacy sequel where you kind of like a Superman Returns style sequel where you kind of ignore the bad movies, you go back and you try to jump ahead. I mean, I like the idea of that. I don't know if this is. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
because I was thinking, like, what if you did a movie where essentially Alex Murphy Robocop, you take place maybe after Robocop 2, maybe after Robocop 1, just get rid of 3 either way. Um, and you're able to kind of pick it up where maybe he's died. Maybe they're like, or that's the thing, or maybe he's like almost fully human again and in a position of power or authority or something like that. I think one of the spec scripts for a RoboCop Legacy sequel involved him like being the mayor of Detroit, something like that. But essentially, you have your corporate people going for nostalgia, okay, of these great past times, and so they decided to bring the RoboCop program back because that was such a great success. And it's all kinds of shifty and all that stuff. But then you have the character fight to regain his humanity, or they could have even made a legacy sequel and made it a female RoboCop.
Yeah.
Um, or have multiple RoboCops and have one of them just be a little bit more human than the others and able to break out of that and end up having to fight the other RoboCops at the end. That type of thing. Like, it could be really doable with this style, but doing just this straight soulless reboot.
Yeah. Well, and even like here again,
Right,
he gets everything back. It's too happy of an ending.
ooh, those are Tavors. Those are really good guns.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have been, and I don't like that he gets everything back. I think that it should have been a movie about dealing with loss. I think that's a.
I mean, his partner
poignant
survives. His family's intact and relatively, seems like, again, there's no, yeah.
And
yeah. The fact that they end again on Sam Jackson here and kind of his take on it in a way, just, yeah. Again, the idea of going to a dynamic character and then doing just like a big bump, kind of a smash end. I get what they wanted to do, but I think that this falls, again, somebody was on paper like, oh, we got Sam Jackson. What if we have him finally, do his Sam Jackson F-bombs, but they're bleeped out because we're PG-13 for some stupid reason. And that's like the big ending. And like, again, I get in a corporate boardroom how that looks good on paper, and it just falls flat here to me.
it falls extremely flat to me. I think that I don't know, I just think that it's stupid. Like, this whole ending scene adds nothing. Like, does it even add the slightest hint towards something more interesting in a future movie? Like, it doesn't do that for me.
Yeah, like this, like, that's it. That's the end, is Sam Jackson yelling that America's the greatest country on the face of the earth, and then we're gonna like jump to like an old what is this, a Ramones song or something?
I'm not sure. Was this like around the rise of like the MAGA time? I mean, this would have been filmed in like 2012 or 2013 to come out at the beginning of 2014.
No, so Trump
and
wasn't.
What's his face didn't even start his campaign until 2014. I don't know.
I know that you're not as big of a music guy as me, but this is like Ramones or the Clash or something like that, and it's just weird. It's a weird tone to end on.
Yeah, this is if this movie had been a proper satire, this would have been fine, but it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, because it's also like,
kind of funny,
haha, gotcha, kind of a, like, it's so
The
it's
movie
interesting.
wasn't fun enough for this song to end it.
No, no. Well, that thing is, it wasn't fun enough, but it also wasn't dire enough or like serious enough. It played it very safe. It made a lot of decisions that were just like you've said several times. They're very true though, that were designed to not offend anybody and appeal to kids, and the action. And that's where I know that it was. This is something that's interesting about the 80s and 90s, is that you had a lot of kids playing with toys based on movies that they weren't supposed to have seen. Aliens, Predator,
Right.
Robocop, Terminator, like all these franchises that's like, why are we making like kids toys targeted for like 8-year-old boys for movies that you would never show them? That was kind of a thing. And so I think that at some point somebody's like, well, see, we should make the movies so they can see them because they already like the toys. And it's like, all right, you're missing the point here that you can sell an 8-year-old boy.
It's Teenage Rebellion, guys.
Yeah, and it's you don't need them to see the movie for them to like a toy of a robot killing machine. Like that's just an 8-year-old boy thing. They like that anyways. But this movie, it so fell in the middle of so many things where it wasn't enough of this, but it also wasn't enough of this, and it didn't commit fully to being a satire. It didn't commit fully to being like just a movie about loss and about what it means to have your humanity missing, and then what that means to being like, what does it mean to be a good cop? What part of being a good cop needs a person in there, versus a cold machine? And how what does humanity mean? It's always like when you talk about your humanity, he has the little he talks about consciousness is just perception and decision making. It's like, okay, so like, okay, what is the difference? What is the line between human soul and passion and motivation versus just making decisions? I mean, we love science fiction, and how many good robot characters? I mean, Data comes to mind immediately, and Spock comes to mind immediately as Star Trek examples of where you explore those themes, but where you explore what it means to be human, and how you separate that from cold, calculating, logical decision making, and why does one work well in certain situations but leave you short in others? I mean, there's so many things you could do, and it just grazed all of them without doing any of them.
Well, that's I think the greatest sin of this movie. And you run into a lot of movies that do this, and I think that those other movies that I mentioned, like Captain America Civil War and Batman vs. Superman and stuff like that, as much as there is quality stuff to those movies, they both fell into the same trap where they were they wanted to say something, okay? But they were trying so hard not to offend anybody with what they were saying and cause controversy that they end up saying nothing. And a lot of movies and TV shows have fallen into that same exact trap where they don't want to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing.
Why do you think this? I've been thinking about this, and I don't have a great answer, honestly, so I'm hoping you'll bail me out of this. What do you think it was about, from let's say from the late 70s through the early 2000s? There were plenty of mediocre films during that time, so I'm not trying to say that, but like, what was it about the memorable, iconic films that let them not fall into those traps? Like, what do you think? What do you think were the factors that kept them from falling into that particular pit creatively?
I think that it was a combination of things. One was that we didn't have a full picture of just how incredibly influential the film industry is on just culture. We didn't have, like, the influence existed, but we as a society didn't have a full view of just how important that is. Um,
Hmm.
Secondly, is also the invention of the internet and the invention of social media, and the amount of internet and social media reactions and outrage that will actively affect the sales of a movie. So if somebody on social media sits here and comes to Robocop and says this is propaganda dribble that's just showing that these people who go out and kill innocent people and abuse their power are actually good, and this movie supports that. How could anybody being involved with this production, be allowed to walk free? That type of thing. And if the right person says it, and if the right amount of people decide that they want to make that post viral, then suddenly that movie tanks. Suddenly that movie doesn't make any money. Let's look at the most recent Disney remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. That one had, they had a little bit of a message in there in more than one spot, and a whole bunch of people, were just like, this isn't the message that we want from a Snow White movie. Why did you put this in here? And then you have the main actress who comes out and says some really dumb stuff and insults a whole bunch of people, and may she never know peace. But you end up with companies being so scared of having a bad reaction to the opinion of the movie that they will sanitize anything that the movie is saying, unless there's a big enough draw to the movie for them to be able to get away with saying something.
Do you think part of it also is, thinking about social media and the internet, the amount of influence on the creatives themselves was less back in the day? They had a smaller bubble, so to speak, as far as like what was influencing them when they were writing their stories and coming up with their ideas, and their it was just a narrower funnel of influence.
Potentially, but you are coming out of like the great boom of science fiction with a lot of the authors. Comic books were at an all-time high. You're coming off of like the 60s and 70s with the hippies and all that stuff, and that kind of radical ideas and thinking outside the box in a lot of ways, both for good and for ill. That I don't know. I don't think that they would be, or you know what? Maybe you are right, because maybe there's less of the echo chamber. There's less of the, oh no, you need to be saying it this way in order to succeed. Because they had like less immediate communication with each other.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, this. I mean, this. I don't. To wrap this up, I guess, because I do want to. Let's wind down here and thinking. This is a movie that if I just watch it if I watch it without thinking about the comparisons, if I don't pay really close attention, there's plenty in this movie that I can enjoy, that I can just kind of like, yeah, this is just, I'm just chilling. It's kind of a fun action film, with some fun sci-fi and almost superhero-esque, stuff to it. Then it's perfectly fine, and I can enjoy it. When I really get into like why, it's the comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this is one of those movies where, yeah, when you really get into comparing it and understanding what made the first one so memorable, then that really does just kind of tank this movie. So that's where, I think this movie exists in like two separate scenarios. And one, it's a perfectly fine mid-tier sci-fi action film with some some good effects work and some good acting, and that's it. And then on the other hand, it is a extremely mediocre and generic remake of one of the most iconic films from the 1980s. So
Yeah, I after having seen the original and being able to compare them side by side like this, despite also agreeing that it's not nearly as bad as people said, and it should be like burned in a garbage fire, blah blah blah. Like there is quality aspects to it, but it feels almost like disrespectful to the original more than anything.
yeah, in a lot of ways, you're
And
right.
that's very difficult to reconcile, I guess.
Yeah.
With being able to say that, oh, it does have a right to exist. Because the fact is, I don't think it does. I don't think this movie should exist. I don't think it should have happened. I think that it needed to have been taken more seriously by the production company.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think
this.
that it was also just made at the wrong time.
Yeah. Well, this is a good example of a property that that was like when a studio goes, well, what do we have? When they see a hit or they see, okay, some stuff is doing good, like, well, what do we have that we can make that does that? It's like, well, we own Robocop. That's like a thing people liked back in the day. At one point people loved it, and that is the worst starting point for almost anything creatively, where it's I mean, gosh, we're seeing that. I mean, there's this is still a property that because Amazon owns this now, right? Because it was MGM. And I was just thinking of
Yep, I was actually gonna say, like, the poster boy for what you're saying to me is Amazon with milking the Lord of the Rings into Rings of Power.
Yep, they're about to do it with James
and
Bond.
other things like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just it's
pretty much anything involving
content.
Warner Brothers. Nobody can destroy a franchise like Warner Brothers.
No, but I do think
they
that
have a talent for it.
Yeah, I really do think though that streaming is going to be and just these these machines of content. I mean, streaming, man, for the shows that truly were amazing and the things that made it out because of streaming, there's so much more where it's just like you have to. It's like news. You have to fill the space, and you're going to fill the space with the stuff that it has the best chances of making money. And so that means that we're going to play on the one thing that people will show up for, something they recognize, because human beings are ultimately pretty straightforward creatures that respond predictably to things that we used to like. We'll at least check it out for curiosity's sake. And guess what? At the end of the day, as long as, it's to use the term clickbait, it's just like, as long as we look at it once, they've succeeded. And that's just, it's such a cynical, but it's also true, unfortunately. And it's frustrating to have so many things be milked for content. And for the occasion, again, I'm not trying to discount that there are things here and there that are truly good, but they're the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. I don't think there will ever be a RoboCop movie that's better than the original, but especially in the modern day, you could do a very interesting and poignant follow-up that this movie just wasn't it.
Yeah.
And it did not make enough money, man. It did not.
And it wasn't horrible receipts, right? It over doubled its budget, but that just wasn't nearly good enough to really justify. Well, I mean, when you barely double your budget, which is the break-even point, generically speaking, and you're not loved, then they knew a follow-up to this just wasn't
going to go anywhere.
It wasn't.
Yeah. There's no franchise potential in
No.
this. People weren't excited afterward. They were like disappointed.
Yeah, because if you have a movie like Batman Begins, a lot of people forget that Batman Begins was not some monster at the box office, but it had people excited, and then you followed it up with The Dark Knight. So but that doesn't happen very often.
It's the same thing with the first Iron Man movie. People are just like, oh my gosh, the MCU billion-dollar movies. They didn't make over $1 billion until the Avengers, and even the ones following the Avengers didn't quite get there either. Except Iron Man 3, I think it was.
Yeah, weirdly.
It's just essentially these movies. I mean, Iron Man made a good profit, but it wasn't the biggest smash hit of the summer.
No,
but they smash hit of that summer was The Dark Knight.
Yeah, but they also kept their budgets under control, at least somewhat back then. I mean, nowadays every Marvel film's a $200 million film, so it's got to make $1 billion to. Anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. Right. But this has been fun, man. I mean, as much as this movie is what it is, it's always fun doing this with you, my friend. And we are taking quite the turn next week. We haven't done anything animated other than Iron Giant, right? So I think this is our second time ever.
So I think you're correct. This is going to be our second time going into an animated movie.
And I do want to. I'm not going to say
what
who.
movie is that?
Well, How to Train Your Dragon. And we are... What's that?
Nothing. I'm just
okay.
echoing you.
Gotcha. I was going to say, just to tease, we are having a special guest that has not been on the podcast before. So looking forward to that. Until then, have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
The stores and corners, kid. If you don't clear the room, if you don't come in slow,